Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, and I'd like to welcome you to Cosmic Conversations. Whether you're watching us here live or on replay, we thank you so much for being with us. And thank you so much for joining us yet again another week. Our guest for this episode is a beautiful friend of mine, Victoria Reynolds. And Victoria is known as the Oracle of Freedom. She's an angelic walk-in and a spiritual luminary. She's a best-selling author, an international speaker, a host, a creator of the Fearless and Free TV. She is a conscious communicator that works with the Ascended Masters and the Guardians of Divine Light on behalf of planet Earth. So yay, I can't wait to hear about what Victoria's got to say to us tonight, because she's also going to speak with us about how the great human experience is enter into its final phase of the fear-based level of the Earth game. Now, it is final revealing of all things once hidden and last plays before humanity levels up. And as with any game, the final plays are the most difficult to navigate. This is where humanity learns to master their dominion and to rise into new possibilities where love and peace prevail. And so I want to go ahead and bring Victoria up. Hey, Victoria, thanks so much for being with us tonight. I can't wait to hear what you have to offer. And I guess I'll be seeing you along with a lot of other people at the Portal to Ascension that's coming up April 21st, 22nd, and 23rd in San Diego. So if you guys haven't gotten your tickets, please go to Portal to Ascension and do that. And then come up and say hi to us, because I know you're going to be there, right?
I'm going to be there. I'm actually not speaking this time. All the speaking spots have been filled up with other amazing people. I do have a booth there. I will be there with all of my books, and
all right,
we'll be doing book signings and all of that while I'm there too. So
woohoo. Yeah. All right, so you can catch one of her books as well. Okay, Victoria, I can't wait to hear what you have to offer us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and step aside. I'm going to turn this over to you, and then we'll come back and I'll have a few questions, and we'll take a few questions from the audience as well. They'll be typing in their questions. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead, Victoria. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Sheila. It's such a delight to be here. It's always beautiful to be in your presence and to be of service to your community. And when you asked me a couple of days ago what I was going to speak on, I had sat with that for a minute and I thought, what is it I'm going to speak about? So it's been coming in very, very strongly for me for about the last month, is the great human experience. This, of course, isn't a new concept. It might be a new concept for people who are newly awakening. But for me, this is one way that was explained to me about, I want to say in about 2010. And so in 2010, my personality self and my higher self became acquainted with each other. Let's put it that way. And one of the very first messages that came in from my higher self to my personality self was that Earth was a learning planet until which time the collective of souls determined for it to be a place of peace. And so this was all brand new learning for my personality self. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up an extremely fundamentalist, very like as far right on the political spectrum as you can imagine. I actually grew up in a fundamentalist, polygamous doomsday cult in the mountains of Montana. And it's funny because people always say, well, religion, polygamy, that's normal in Utah, right? Well, okay. Mormons actually don't practice polygamy. So I'm going to make sure that clear that field right now. And obviously polygamy isn't just in Utah. But I did grow up in this cult environment that was based on what's called Mormon fundamentalism, which is what the Mormon church looked like 150 years ago in the mid 1800s. And this particular group that I was a part of never evolved past that. So I grew up with the long dresses and we weren't allowed to listen to music because anything that had a beat meant that it was from the devil. We weren't allowed to have a television. So I missed pretty much everything from the 1960s and 1970s. So if you bring up a show that everybody was watching in the 60s and 70s, I've probably never seen it. I might have heard of it, but most of that I'm completely clueless about. Like in Gilligan's Island, I couldn't tell you what that was. And so that's the kind of environment I grew up in. And I grew up with every doomsday prophecy you can imagine. So it's really fascinating for me right now as I'm watching a lot of these prophecies actually right before our eyes. And that, you know, and I thought for years that my parents were completely nuts because of all this doomsday stuff that I grew up with. I'm finding out that they weren't entirely off their rockers, so to speak, because a lot of what I grew up in, I was being taught is actually showing up right now in our collective field, although it was justified through polygamy, and there was also a lot of pedophilia that happened there as well. So it's interesting how some human beings can use religion as justification for whatever it is that they choose to justify in God's name. I actually call that's actually what it means to use God's name in vain, to actually use God's name in vain. So getting back to this insight that came in at the end of 2010, beginning of 2011, that Earth was a learning planet until it is determined by the collective of soul for it to be a planet of peace. So I started understanding, interstanding is actually where the word understanding came from. I started interstanding from this personality self and my higher self, the way that this human experience is actually created and how it actually gets. The very best way to explain it is that someone has a lot of background noise. If someone needs to mute themselves because it's very distracting for me. Thank you. Sorry, then I actually do what I call love streaming. So if there's any distractions, I can't actually hear what Spirit's trying to communicate with me. So thank you for everybody for muting yourselves. And that what I started seeing is the best way to explain this human experience is to explain it as though it's the most complex video game ever written. So I remember as a child being told that God had everything already planned out. Everything that's ever been, is, and ever will be is already planned out. And God already knew that I would be a complete loser at life and I would end up going to hell because I fell off the path. That was my perception when I was younger. And I couldn't understand how it's possible that God already knew everything that already was, is, and ever will be. So, but when you start thinking about the human experience as a video game, it's also sometimes referred to as the great human experiment, because the divine human blueprint was created in a way that is an experiment of all other civilizations that came before it, literally across the entire universe. So the human genome is a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And so I'm actually an embodied Elohim. So we, the Elohim, got together and we decided to take the best of every culture that had ever existed across the universe before this and create this divine human blueprint. And so this blueprint, this avatar we're all in, is one of the most miraculous and well-designed concepts ever created. And I use this avatar because we as energy chose to experience the human experience with one of these avatars. So if you can compare being human with playing the most complex video game ever created, and then you can begin to understand that the game itself has already been coded. It's already been created, and all of the codes for our human experience already exist. So if you think about coding a very complex video game, then you can understand how God has it all planned out. But in that same way, there are an unlimited number of choices as we play that game. So it isn't like God said, I'm making this game and there's only one way to win the game. There's only one way to get the golden token at the end of the game. There's only one way to level up. If you've ever played a very complex video game, you know there's an infinite number of ways to win the game or to level up to the next level of the game. And so every single one of us, as we are moving through this game and making the choices that we make, they're impacted by the other 8 billion people that are also choosing how to navigate and maneuver through this game. And there are an infinite number of choices each one of us 8 billion people make every moment of every day. So imagine that, the complexity of that game. That's what we've been playing. And so what we've been playing, my understanding for about the last 11,000 years, my guidance was between the last 10 and 12,000 years, that's when fear entered the human experience. And as a collective of souls, imagining that our higher self is actually the one playing the game, and our higher self is communicating with the personality self to say, do this, go here, make the choices, that the collective of souls that are actually playing this game are our higher selves. And we're always choosing at a higher level how we play that game outside of this physical vessel. There's a movie I saw a few years ago called Ready Player One. And for me, that was a great way of explaining how the avatar makes its decisions within the game. And there's also someone else that's outside of the game who is making the decisions for how the individual within the game makes the choices. So that's just a really easy way to explain the complexity of the human experience. And which is why it's so important that as we move through our lives, that we always ask up. So the human default is to go into our head, is to go into the logical reasoning part of our head that says, oh, I should do this, I should do that. Well, one of the things I often tell people is don't shit on yourself and don't shit on anybody else and don't let other people shit on you. But we go into this default of thinking what we should do. And that overactive mind that is currently working through this, what has been a fear-based reality, where all choices and decisions are made first through fear. And humanity is actually starting to move out of that fear-based reality. I call it the old fear-based reality. I used to call it the current fear-based reality, but so many of us are no longer in that fear-based reality. We can now refer to it as the old fear-based reality, the past fear-based reality, and really start to see that that was something that was created in the past. And now we are moving into this love-based reality. As I started calling it when I had my big aha, my great awakening experience occurred after the 2008 recession. And that's when I found my spiritual path. And that's when my personality self and higher self started communicating with each other in 2010. And then my higher self actually merged down into this body. I completed that convergence in 2018. So I was actually born Margaret. I changed my name to Victoria because Victoria is the name of the being of light that I am. And it's funny because people have said, well, isn't that convenient that your name is the same name as your spiritual name? My birth name was Margaret, and I chose my spiritual name to actually now be my physical embodiment. And I've legally changed my name to Victoria to match who I really am. And so going back to that, one of those very first messages that came in about Earth being a learning planet until the collective of souls determined for it to be a place of peace. And so approximately 11,000 years ago, we as a collective of souls agreed to allow fear to play a role on the planet, and that we agreed to learn through the contrast of love and fear, of light and darkness, and allow this to be the level that humanity would learn through. And the reason we chose for that to be the case is because we knew that darkness is an exceptional medium for growth. So we chose on a soul level to plant ourselves down in the darkness, root ourselves, and then see if we could emerge into the light. That's the ultimate challenge across the universe, is to see if we can remember who we are as love and light experiencing self in human form. So imagine playing the most complex video game you've ever played, and you're up for the challenge to see if you could remember who you are, going down here into this darkness and into this very complex field, and see if we could remember who we are. Now, the beautiful thing that's happening on this planet right now is so many people are beginning to remember who they are and choosing to emerge out of the fear and the darkness and into the love and the light that we actually all are. And more people are beginning to experience their higher self now coming and merging into this form, because that veil between levels of the game is melting away into the nothingness from whence it came. And so what I mean by leveling up is that there are enough of us who have said, I see what's been going on here. And I choose love. I choose, make all my choices from love first. I choose for love to be my default. I choose the consciousness of love. I choose to recognize where fear has played out in my life and work through it. I choose to do all my shadow processing so I don't carry any of this fear and baggage with me anymore. And so that's what's been happening. It actually started in the 1960s. This is when the ascension started. So I hear people say all the time, I can't wait for the ascension. The ascension actually started 60 years ago, 1963, from my understanding. So we are now 60 years into the ascension process. And what that means on the human experience game level, if you will, is leveling up out of that fear-based, very dense, dark level of the game where life was a continual battle. And we were always trying to figure out how to one-up each other, how to compete with each other. And as we pull ourselves out of that level of the game and into the next level, which is what many are now referring to as 4D, that 3D, that fear-based level of the game is what's referred to as 3D, the matrix, under the veil. And so people are now piercing the veil, stepping above the veil. The veil is actually beginning to dissipate and disappear, and it will eventually no longer exist, because everything has ever been is going to be shown to humanity, and humanity will then be able to make conscious choice rather than the manipulated choice that humanity has been in for a very, very, very long time. And so when I talk about the end of the game being the hardest, if you've ever played a video game, you know that just before you level up is the hardest part of the game. That is where you have your awakening experience. And it almost always involves something, the death of an old something, an old business, an old belief system, old ways of living, old ways of believing, old constructs, maybe an old belief about yourself. And it can actually include a near-death experience of your own physical being. But it's generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, is a very difficult and painful experience that brings you to your knees and then opens you up and makes it possible for you to move into the next level, which is this fourth dimension, which is where both the love-based reality and the fear-based reality exist, and you start navigating your way up the spiritual spiral into heaven on earth, which of course begins with heaven on earth within yourself. So ultimately what we're trying to do is move with as much grace and ease as possible through this fourth dimension, where we get to do all of our shadow processing. This is where we do our karmic resolution. This is where we get to see how the dark side of the game has been played. And so what I find fascinating is that you have a lot of people who want to just bypass. They want to spiritually bypass 4D, not understanding the value of this part of our reality. This level that many of us are in right now is really the chrysalis phase that occurs in the transformation in order to become who we're always meant to be. So if you imagine the 3D matrix level of the game, that humanity is a caterpillar. We're just going around in mere survival, trying to eat everything we can, because caterpillars are voracious. I don't know if you ever watched them, but they eat everything in sight. and then they go into that chrysalis. And in that chrysalis, they process. They go through the process of leaving who they were behind and reimagining themselves as who they were always meant to be. And that reimagining is where humanity presently is. We are reimagining what the human experience can look like. Eventually, we will emerge from this transition phase into what humanity has the full capacity to be. If you imagine emerging as a beautiful butterfly, that miracle of humanity is what human beings are capable of. And we still need this process that we're in right now. And part of this process we're in right now, this is the ascension process. This is the remembrance process. This is also, sometimes I call it the holy shift, the great awakening, the mass awakening, the convergence of where our higher self begins communicating with the personality self, and we converge in this beautiful spiritual experience that it's an extraordinary time to be in. We actually get to recreate the entire human experience. We get to imagine what's possible right here and what's happening right now. Let's not bypass it or attempt to bypass it, because this is where the real work is. And this is where you find the peace within yourself and the heaven on earth within yourself. And you make peace with the process. This is where peace on earth is created. This is where heaven on earth is actually created in our physical experience. And so this is the most extraordinary time humanity has faced since the creation of the divine human experience, because we get to reimagine what we want this planet to look like when we emerge from this present time. The other thing that's also happening right now is the apocalypse. So a lot of people think that the apocalypse is an event in the same way they think the ascension is an event. The apocalypse actually means the great revealing of all things once hidden. And so we see that happening right now. We see all of the skeletons being pulled out of the closets, and the rugs being rolled up, and all the stuff that's been swept out from under the carpets is being pulled out from under the carpets. We are now, and in the forthcoming future, going to be able to see all the secrets that people have attempted to hide. And so if you have secrets that you've tried to hide away, it's better to just come out into the open, be pure and authentic, and be in the truth of who you are, because nothing will remain hidden. And so the only people who really need to be afraid of the apocalypse are the people who are trying to hide things. But if we have nothing to hide and we're going through life in pure authenticity of who we are, we have nothing to worry about, because we have nothing to hide. So that's where humanity presently is. And this is an incredibly exciting time. I had a message that came in to me, it was probably now about a year ago, that the collective of souls have now chosen for this to be a planet of peace. That learning through the contrast is now complete on a soul level. And that humanity will now experience the earth experience as learning through love, learning through joy, learning through mutual support, expressing peace and love and acceptance for all of us and for all that is, as we come together, all united, that all of these divisive labels that were created to keep humanity divided and conquered will start to melt and disappear and fade away. Because on a soul level, we have chosen for that to be the case. Now, the decisions that we make on a soul level don't always happen instantly on the planet. Sometimes it takes a couple of years for what's created in the energetic field to manifest on the physical fields. And understand that process is already decided and it is already in place. So what does that look like? Imagine if we all chose to no longer take sides. What if we all chose to accept each other for who they are? What if we didn't say, well, I'm a Republican and I'm a Democrat, I'm this religion, I'm that religion? What if we didn't do that? What if we all just said, I am that I am, and you are that you are, and we are all that. We are all divine love, having a human experience, and the labels and the division just melts away. What if the people who are soldiers for their countries all stood up and said, no, I will not fight your wars for you. We would have no war. What if the mothers on this planet said, I will not send my children off to kill other women's children? War would cease to exist. What if humanity woke up and said, I see, war has never been in God's name. That's just a narrative that we were sold. All war is really about greed and wanting to take what doesn't belong to us. And we refuse to fight. And we all laid down our weapons. There would be peace on earth. And so this is what we are now moving into. That people will begin to choose better choices. Human beings will begin to choose to no longer pick sides, to no longer be in competition with each other, to no longer think that one is better than another. My country is better than your country. My color is better than your color. My gender is better than your gender. My shade is better than your shade. And we all realize that we are all really just one love, having a human experience. We all have our own unique avatars, but we are all the same. We are all divinity experiencing and expressing itself through unique expressions that we all are. And that's what we have to look forward to. That is what the next level of the game looks like. When enough of us choose to process our old personal stories, to process our shadow, to process the collective shadow, and no longer hold any anger, resentment, blame, judgment toward anything that has been. When we choose to no longer see ourselves as victims in a video game, and we choose love in all things. We choose peace in all things. We choose unity in all things and refuse to be divided. And when enough of us choose that, then we will begin coming together, reimagined as something extraordinary. That's the new earth everyone is talking about. It's so funny because I saw something about a week ago, or I don't know, some YouTube channel, and then the woman was complaining that the word new age, new earth was some new age term. And I just had to laugh because the new earth is talked about in the Bible, in the New Testament. So new earth is not a new age term. I think it's hysterical that anybody would even think that. And what I find really fascinating is that these terms that we use in the spiritual community are exactly the same terms the religious community uses. And we think we're so different. And we think we're on opposite sides. And the truth is we're not. And this bridge is being built to bring all of that together onto one bridge so that humanity can move with greater ease out of this lower fear-based level of the great human experience game until at some point we've all leveled up and that level of the game ceases to exist. And the masses of humanity will be learning then at this fourth dimensional level of the game where there is a balance of light and dark, fear and love. So we're actually, what we're doing right now is restoring balance to the planet. If you think back before Earth, before fear came to the planet, all the way up was love. There was nothing here except love. And then fear came to the planet and there was this balance of fear and darkness, love and light for human beings to move through. But then what happened is that fear became more and more and more pervasive until it swung all the way up to being a fear-based reality. So we went from a love-based reality to balanced, then a fear-based reality, and we're now swinging back to balance. So in this fourth dimension that humanity is going to be in for quite some time, so don't be in such a hurry to instantly think we're popping right into 5D, we're going to be here for a while, experiencing the balance of light and darkness, fear and love, and those realities will coexist for a while. The important thing is that as each of us choose love, we make it possible for the rest of humanity to begin experiencing that as well. We are the way showers. So we woke up early so that we could help lead the way for the rest of humanity. And so congratulations for remembering who you are and choosing love, choosing to remember, choosing to be the light, choosing to be the way. That's what Yeshua meant when he said, I am the light and the way. He understood that he knew that he was a way shower and a light leader. And so are all of you. That's part of what he meant when he said, you can do as I have done. And we're all imbued with that as the divine child.
That's beautiful. And I have a comment. Someone is wondering if you could talk to the effect of the light body, how we will transmute into light. And also if you could talk about what happens to everyone that does not make the trip.
Well, being transmuted into light body has already started. The light started flooding the planet about 10 years ago. When people talk about the flash that's going to change us all into light bodies, it actually started 10 years ago. My understanding, I started knowing about these waves in 2014. So I think they actually started coming in 2013. By the time I understood what they were, it was the middle of 2014. These are actually gamma waves that are coming in from the great central sun. They're not coming, it's not a solar flash coming from our personal sun. They're actually coming from another sun. My understanding is that's another sun that has exploded and we're receiving these waves, these light waves. We cannot see them with our physical eyes, but they're changing our physical makeup. They're changing they're actually, they're activating our light bodies and they're actually changing the human makeup from carbon to crystalline. Our bodies are actually changing. And there, you may have noticed this for yourself, that you may find that your body doesn't tolerate a lot of the food it used to tolerate. It no longer tolerates a lot of the movies you used to watch. It no longer tolerates fear and violence. You're going through an upgrade already. You might look in the mirror and think you still look the same. Or maybe you look in the mirror and realize you're actually getting younger. I look in the mirror and go, oh, well, that's really interesting. People have actually said to me, you look younger than you did 5 years ago. So there is as Joan of Angels calls it, a youngering process that's happening. We have, and our supposed junk DNA is also being activated by these light waves that are coming in. Science calls it junk DNA. It's really just inactive genetic material that we have that went dormant as we went from being a fifth dimensional love-based existence down to this third dimensional fear-based existence. A lot of the material was turned off. It's now being turned back on. And as these light waves flood the planet, this is why you're seeing so many people who now have telepathic capabilities. Our superpowers are being turned on. And so it might not look like things are happening very fast, but if you stand where you are and you look at how much has changed on our planet in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, there was an awakening for a lot of this current wave of spiritual teachers. There were hundreds of thousands of us. And we kept saying that a great awakening is coming. And that started happening just before 2020, that people started waking up all over the place. Well, the reason people are waking up all over the place is because there's so much light coming to the planet. And these are gamma light waves that are activating the pineal gland, changing the body from carbon to crystalline, and activating our spiritual superpowers. And these waves are getting stronger and stronger and stronger and more and more and more frequent until eventually there will be a mass awakening, and the masses of humanity will have an awakening experience, which really feels like having a aha. If you remember when you had your awakening experience, did it not feel like a bunch of ahas suddenly happening? It works like that. There isn't going to be some flash that suddenly everybody wakes up. Ultimately, the plan is that no one gets left behind, for those of you who were asking, which is one of the reasons it's being allowed to take as long as it has, because we're trying to get as much of humanity to wake up and step onto this light path, this light bridge as much as possible. And so the only people that get left behind are people who choose that as conscious choice. And there are some souls that will choose to opt out of this present level of the great human experience, this level of the game, and they will come back in another form. There will be some, yes. I do not see it being masses of humanity with dead bodies laying everywhere. That would actually be terrifying for the human experience and would actually downgrade human beings back into reality based in fear. And so we are doing everything we can to prevent that from happening, so that that humanity can remain in this elevated spiritual experience that human beings are rising to. Does that answer that question?
Yes. And, a lot of people have talked about that Gaia herself is the one that's making the transition, and that humans are, once they're able to hold enough light, that they will transition over as well. Can you kind of address that comment?
Yes. So what's really fascinating, what's happening on this planet is a very unique and rare occasion across the universe where a planet and her people ascend at the same time. So Gaia has actually begun her ascension process. My understanding is that Gaia has actually experienced a walk-in experience herself, which is really interesting to think about. So Gaia has had a walk-in experience where her higher self has actually merged into her physical vessel. If you think about the planet is actually an avatar for a soul as well, in the same way that we are our physical bodies, the planet herself is also a sentient being. And her body has also been going through an ascension process. And her higher self has now merged. And so she is actually experiencing the earth experience differently. My understanding is that I've been calling her Sophia Gaia. And Sophia is actually her higher self. And Sophia has now merged down in with Gaia. And her personality has actually changed a little bit, where she was this kind, gentle, loving, sweet mother. And Sophia is the higher self. And Sophia is saying, I love you. And I'm really tired of being abused. And I'm no longer going to tolerate this abusive relationship on my body. And so she is going to start cleaning house and putting the kids in timeout if they're that aren't playing nicely, and tough love. So we're going to start experiencing Mother Earth's tough love, a more mature mother.
And so for people who are just now starting the awakening process, what do you have to share or to say to them?
Question everything. As you begin that process, once you have crossed into that next level and you have the ahas start showing up, whoop, it's like waves of ahas that start showing up in your life. Be willing to question everything you've ever believed about everything. Because in that lower dimensional reality, we were told what to think. We were told what to think, what to believe, what to wear, what to eat, like small children. So that the human design is actually very young. On a universal scale, the human design is about the age of a 2-year-old. Very sweet, very innocent little beings. And so if you imagine a 2-year-old, where mom and dad make all the choices for them. So our choices in the 3D level of the game have been pretty much made for humanity. Haven't really had to make a lot of conscious choices. Haven't really learned discernment yet. But what's fascinating is that humanity is growing up. And what's really interesting, if you've ever had a 3-year-old, they start asking questions. Why? How? Why? They start questioning everything they were told when they were 2. And so allow yourself to question everything. And the most important thing is to question, was that fear-based? When I was told that, is that fear? Was that based in fear? Was that based in control? Was that based in division? Was that based in againstness? Was that based in keeping me from defining the love within myself and within everyone else? Because in this reality we've been living in, this past reality, the matrix, the 3D, it was all based in fear. All of our choices were made by the default of fear. And so fear is written into all of our religiosities. It's written into our school systems. It's written into the banking systems. It's written into the political systems. It's written into all of the movies and all the news stories. All of it is fear-based. And so learning how to extract the love out of the fear takes discernment. And so humanity collectively has entered the age of discernment. We're now past the information age. Now we're in the age of discernment. It's more mature. So we're now having to use that muscle of discernment. And it's the first time we've ever had to use it. So this is brand spanking new for people. You have to sit and really think about their beliefs and really think about what they've been told. And so the best way to do that when you go up against anything that you're wondering about and asking questions about is to ask yourself, how can I see this through the eyes of love? What does this really mean? What is this? What is the truth in this? And remember, the truth is always loving, always, always, always loving. And so ask with genuine curiosity, what's true and what's real, and how can I see it through love?
One of the things, we had a starseed panel, and one of the questions that was asked is, what is the truth? And so I want to kind of pose that to you. What is your opinion about what the truth actually is? The big
Boy,
question.
that is a big question. Yes. So my understanding is that there's individual truth and there's universal truth. And individual truth is aligned with your own soul's journey through the cosmos, your own soul's understanding. So your higher self, your soul will teach you what it already knows. And if your soul, if it's a young soul, you haven't experienced a lot of it, but the truth is every single one of us have access to the Akashic records and have access to universal truths. And the most important thing is to understand that the truth is always loving, always. And there is a difference between belief and truth. Beliefs can change. Truths are immutable. So the truth is that love is all that is. And fear is the lower vibrations of love. Fear exists as a means of self-preservation, but it is still based in love. It's just been used by some people to manipulate the masses, but it still exists within the context of love. Now, what's true for me personally might be different than what's true for you. For example, one of my truths is knowing that I need to be willing to let go of everything I have attachments to in order for me to be completely free. That may not be what's true and best for you. The better question is to always ask what's best. So people ask what's right and what's wrong. The better question is what's best? What's best for me? Because what's best for me isn't always going to be what's best for someone else. What's best for me, what's true for me, isn't always going to be what's best and true for my neighbor across the street. And universal truths are universal. They are immutable. Faith is a universal truth. Hope, trust, love, beauty. The laws of the universe, those are our universal truths. So I don't know, does that help? But really the question is what's best. And again, ask your higher self what's true and best for you, and you'll get that guidance.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is see if we have a question from our audience. How do we best share our awakening with others that think all of this stuff is woo-woo?
Well, technically it is, but it's woo!
That's right, it is woo.
You know what I discovered years ago is the best way is to be an example of what's possible. You be authentically you. Everyone wakes up when it's their time, and only when it's in alignment with their own divine timing. You be you. You follow your path and align with your truth, and be a way shower, be the light, so that others will see the light wherever you go. And people will start to ask, wow, something's different about you. But we can't ever force another person to wake up. We can't ever force another person onto their own path as much as we would like to. Because when we try to force another person to wake up, we try to force someone onto their spiritual path, that means we have attachments to who we think they should be, going back to the shooting again. And that actually becomes suffering in our own experience when we expect other people to be who we want them to be. It actually creates suffering within ourselves. Mm-hmm. So be you. And they will wake up when it's their time.
Did that answer your question? Do you need any additional clarity? I think that got it. Beautiful. And she says, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask, you were speaking about that the Elohim got together and, we're having these conversation. I was wondering, are there any other Elohim who have incarnated onto the planet at this time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, every once in a while I meet one. But very, very few of them actually tell anyone who they are. I actually held on to this information for 12 years before I told anyone who I was. I tell people here and there, but what I was shown back in 2011 when I figured out who I was, that in about 10 years humanity would be ready,
Right.
and that now there are enough people who are ready for that, for us who have incarnated from higher realms to be able to come out of the spiritual closet and say who we are without feeling like we're going to be tarred and feathered by the masses.
Right, right. Wonderful. All right. So does anyone else have a question? I'll go ahead now and check the chat.
Oh, and there's archangels here too, if you're wondering. There are hundreds of millions of volunteers who have come from across the cosmos to volunteer and take on these human forms to guide humanity forward. So one of the reasons we volunteered to come and take on human form is because human beings needed to learn how to make better choices. So we came to teach human beings how to make conscious choices to help just guide humanity forward.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, I know earlier you also mentioned that you were going to set up a booth at the Portal to Ascension and bring your books. Can you tell everyone about your books and how they can find you?
Sure. The easiest way to find me is on my website at victoriareynolds.com. I make it easy peasy for people. My YouTube channel, again, is just Victoria Reynolds on my YouTube. I have a Fearless and Free TV. I had 2 separate YouTube channels and I've decided to merge them into one because why divide my energy? And so the books, my most recent book is Recreating Earth. This is a book that was channeled in, it's actually a cooperative book. I co-opted it with Mother Earth, Yeshua, and Metatron. And it is all about what Earth looks like after we move through this. It's basically what new Earth looks like that we are in the process of creating right now, and what that vision is so that humanity knows what to work toward. Because I started getting people asking me about 2 years ago, I love the idea of creating new Earth, but I don't even know where to start and I don't know what it looks like. So a lot of people don't have the ability to envision, which I find fascinating because I've always been able to see the future. And I just assumed everybody else knew how to do that and didn't realize that not everybody does. And so it is a vision for humanity of what the future looks like, and then the role each of us play in making that vision become a physical reality. And then my other books, all of my books are really about various aspects of spiritual freedom.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's see. Now, Ashley has a question. She said, are all the volunteers in physical form? Love this so much.
No, actually, they're not. The other thing that's interesting is that there are hosts of angels also that are not in physical form. We're all walking around with them. We can't see them, but they're called hosts of angels for a reason, because there are millions and millions and millions of angels that are walking around in non-physical form and that are also surrounding the planet and ensuring that the planet is cared and loved. We also have ascended masters. Some ascended masters have taken physical form, some of them have not. There are also volunteers who are star family, some of which have chosen human form. Most of them are not. They're out there in their spaceships, for lack of a better word. There are ships all over the galaxy that are supporting us. We have so much support as we move through this. The entire universe is watching to see how this is done, because I said earlier, this is a very rare event. and the entire universe is watching to see how it's done. And when enough people learn how to master the human experience, we will then take to the stars and go teach other planets how it's done.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's see, we have another question. Olga says, when you said that fear came to the planet 1100 years ago, does that mean that was no fear before that? And did the civilizations at that time not experience fear?
Well, it's 11,000 years ago, not 1100.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. She did
Okay.
11,000. Sorry.
Yeah, quite a long time ago. That's actually what the story of Garden of Eden is all about. So prior to fear arriving at the planet, Earth was this beautiful, very innocent paradise. So if you think about the evolution of humanity in comparison to the evolution of one human being, that when Earth was a paradise, humanity was basically like newborn babies, sweet and innocent and loving and free, naked in a sense. I don't know if you've ever seen a 1-year-old, they run around naked. They don't even think anything about it because there is no fear. They just love. And then eventually human beings learn love. But when human beings are born, love does not exist. I mean, fear doesn't exist in their reality. They're actually one with their mother. And it takes babies a while to actually discover that they are not mom.
Yeah.
So if you compare the evolution of the human species with the growth of a child's, you can see where we are in the human experience. So yes, back then, when there were civilizations that occurred before the present human civilization that have come and gone. This planet has experienced many civilizations. The human experience, my understanding, this particular human experience started about 25,000 years ago, somewhere in that arena. Our last trip around the galaxy.
Right.
And so there was only love as we went around the light side of the galaxy. And then we've experienced fear for that 11,000 years. And now we're going back into experiencing love again and experiencing the balance. So yes, so for a very long time, humanity did only experience love and magic and wonder. And that's when we had the unicorns and the fairies and all those magical creatures actually lived in this experience with us. And as fear came to the planet, we were actually downgraded, and those beings exist in a different dimension. They still exist. We just don't see them because they exist in a different dimension and in a different frequency. But what's fascinating is that little children, before they learn fear, can still see all those characters.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. And we have one more. Well, we actually have two. The one question is, how do past lives and ETs fit into this? Many thanks.
What's really fascinating about this particular time in the human experience is that human beings have been given the opportunity to resolve all karmic issues from all pre-existing lifetimes. We're actually drawing every lifetime that has ever been into this now present moment. So any aspects of us that have existed across all these different timelines, frequencies, and lifetimes are all being brought into this one experience, and we can resolve all karmic issues so that we never again have to experience them. So the souls of humanity basically said, I'm willing to go down there and experience this, and then I'll experience that. I want to learn in this lifetime, I want to experience this and learn this lesson. And in this lifetime, I want to learn this, have this experience and learn this lesson. So sometimes we've been the good guy, sometimes we've been the bad guy, because we wanted to experience everything that it means to experience a human experience. Now, gathering up all the wisdom and all the lessons learned from all of those lifetimes into this now lifetime and resolve all unresolved issues and clear up all karma so that we can move forward karma free. So that's where past lifetimes exist with this, and which is why so many people are now starting to have past lifetime memories, past lifetime experiences being shown to us so that we can resolve them, so that we can forgive ourselves for anything we've done in the past that may have hurt another person. And we can do the forgiveness work across all generations so that our family no longer carries that karma forward. It's a beautiful time to be alive, that we can actually clear all that up so it doesn't get carried into this planet of peace that we're in the process of creating. Now, with regard to the ETs, there have always been non-human, non-earth entities that have come and gone from the earth realm, right? Ancient aliens is a thing. But my understanding is in that this particular human experience, there was an agreement essentially to of non-interference. This agreement of non-interference is the prime directive is freedom of choice. So human beings have complete freedom of choice. So the ETs are not allowed to interfere with our choices. They can interfere with our equipment so we don't wipe each other out, but they can't interfere with our choices, which is also why so many beings chose to incarnate in human form, because human beings were not very good at making choices for themselves. So they need to learn how to actually make conscious choices. So rather than interfering with human choices, we actually chose human form to teach people how to make better choices, if that makes sense. But there are many, many, many beings up there who they are the Alliance of Light, the Guardians of Light, and their purpose right now is to assist with the ascension process of humanity and the earth herself, and to guard that.
Beautiful, thank you. And then Cindy was wondering if you could repeat one more time the name of your first book, or the name of the book that you just mentioned. I guess maybe that was your final book.
That's my most recent book.
First.
Yes.
First.
Yeah, my first book was Transcending Fear. I wrote that in 2012. I just finished a second edition of that. I had just got off the phone earlier today with my publisher, and I'm waiting for her to give me a launch date of the second edition. So if you do buy Transcending Fear, let me know and I'll send you chapter number 7, which is of the book that I just finished. The second edition I just finished. And then my most recent book is Recreating Earth.
Thanks, Victoria.
You're welcome.
That's a perfect title, but Transcending Fear.
Great.
Love you.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, I don't think that I see any other questions. And that brings us now, right at the top of the hour. So I've brought everyone up to kind of say a final good evening. But before I do, Victoria, is there any final comments that you would like to leave for people?
Okay. There's a song that's coming in.
Yay.
Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Does everyone know that song?
Yep.
If you don't, look it up. It makes me cry every time I sing it, so I'm not going to sing the whole thing for you, or I will be a blubbering mess.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you again for being here. I want to thank all of our audience for being here. I want to thank everyone for showing up week after week. And if you are not already on our mailing list, please do so. You can go to the galacticalliance.org and sign up to be on the mailing list. Check us out on the Conscious Awakening Network.org. You can find us on YouTube, different types of platforms, Roku, Amazon, Apple TV. And we are back here every week, same time, same bat station. So until we are back together again, namaste and much love to everyone. I hope you have a beautiful and wonderful week. Thanks so much, and we'll see you
Thank
next week.
you. Great
All right.
presentation.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.